Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for The Walking Dead Compendium 4. This will also be, of course, a large discussion video, as they all have been. This is the complete review slash discussion of the entire series of The Walking Dead, because I've done 1 through 3. If you have not seen those, you guys can check them out. This is in celebration of the return of Free Comic Book Day, which is either tomorrow or today, or you already miss it, but it is Saturday, August 14th? Yeah, I think August 14th. It's Saturday. Whatever weekend this is published, just check that video. But I believe it is August 14th, which is a Saturday. So in celebration, going through all of The Walking Dead. This, of course, will be the last one. I may do a video where it's the entire series, but I don't have much of a reason to do that because I've done like very long videos on all 4 books. So you can check those out and you'll get my pretty much very comprehensive thoughts from beginning to end on the series. And of course, with this being the last one, I'll kind of wrap things up anyway, so I probably won't need to do like a full 1 through 4 my thoughts on everything and rereading all my notes, because that makes the videos long enough as is, because there is a lot to talk about. But going through Compendium 4, as of today, for me personally, it is actually Thursday. I read this whole book. All of this I read today. Fortunately, thank goodness, I'm not doing anything at work right now. I had time to do all this, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. This was brand new for me. 1 through 3, Compendiums 1 through 3, I had read already. I had read them a long time ago. It had been years since I even read just the 3rd one, but I remembered some bits and pieces here and there. I was like, okay, I kind of remember this, I kind of remember that. Some stuff I remembered, some stuff I didn't, so there were still some surprises just kind of going through it, but this was all brand new. Compendium 4 was just like, I don't know who these new, these new characters. I don't know who they are. I don't know who this woman is over here. All this stuff was all brand new. I had no idea who would live, who would die. I had some assumptions. I kind of just figured. I was just like, just some things were, the way certain things were going, I was just like, I think this is going to happen. I feel like that might happen. And, I was just experiencing it, just like, what's going to happen when I turn the page. So I was kind of back to the brand new suspense of like, I don't know who lives and I don't know who dies. So kicking things right off, we have in Mourning. I put this here because I thought this was a really great shot. I think it was the first time they'd ever done this with like the really black bars, like it was a movie almost. So it looked like I was actually looking at a movie scene, and I feel like they did that on purpose. And I thought that was really well done. And of course, that was in Mourning of the like nearly dozen people that they lost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, the 12 people that they lost. And I just thought that was a really good drawing. I thought it was great. I was like, this looks really good. So I wanted to put that there first because that was the first thing that really caught my eye. And then, of course, as things continue, we have a lot of conflict. Rick finds out that Gregory was hung, or hung. He was hung. I think it's been long enough to where technically it's now hung. So he was hung, and he was super pissed off at Maggie. Like, we can't do this. Like, all this stuff that I've done. And Maggie's like, dude, I run my own community. I do what I want. And he was super pissed, and he was doing this thing like in the last one. If you saw my last review, he has this moment where he's like, he tries to just be like, I'm just trying to help everybody. Yeah, I'm the leader, but it's not that big of a deal. But when he's pissed, it's a huge deal because he'll hit people, just like he hit Maggie. And Maggie was like, ha, I'm gonna hit you back. And she punched the F out of him and knocked him to the ground. So, it's like, hey, it is what it is. You're someone after them. That ain't on me. Like, things happen, okay? This stuff ain't me. So I just thought that was worth it. And then I have disappointed because when things got really crazy, Rick thought Michonne was coming in to try to actually kill Lydia, because of course everyone was super pissed. They're like, we don't trust this girl, she's one of them. Everyone was going to try to kill her. And so Michonne came in, sneaking in the middle of the night, and Rick was like, I can't believe you would do this, I'm disappointed in you. And then we found out she was actually there to kind of sneak her out of the house because, Michonne's kind of cool, despite some of the bitchy things she's done in the past. It is what it is. And so, of course, we have Michonne's breakthrough. So this, once again, it kind of pairs with some of the stuff that happened in the last compendium, where Rick kind of gives the explanation of, hey, you deserve to be happy. Like, things have happened to me and you as well. Like, we have deserved the opportunity to be happy. Like, you don't have to keep doing this. And at the time, she kind of listened to him, but it was still just kind of like, it was still kind of. But in this was like her official breakthrough, where it was like, she's breaking down and everything. Like, okay, I get it now, because she lost him. Like, he explained it to her before, but she hadn't lost Ezekiel yet, so it was like, hey, I hear you. But then she was like, I get you now. So she had that big breakthrough, and it was like, okay, that was a good moment for her character. And a lot of people have had that, just throughout it, where people constantly have to be told, like, you're allowed to be happy. I know it sucks, but you are allowed to be happy despite all the things we've lived through, and some of the things you've done, even, because that's kind of a big part of it, where mostly people feel like they don't deserve it because of what they've done, not what's been done to them. So it's like, look, you deserve to be happy. It's been a long effing time. It's just gonna get crazier. Just be happy. But it took losing that opportunity to be with Ezekiel to really comprehend it. So it was a big moment, and I think that really changed her character, kind of going forward. And so then we skip to back to the Whispers, and I just put harsh because it really was. Alpha, she cried when she let Lydia go, and then she got busted, and the dude's like, hey, I'm not going to tell anybody, you don't have to worry about it, but you should put your mask on, and, don't let anybody know that, you have your emotions and whatnot. And she's like, oh, don't worry. Nobody will. And she just slits the dude's throat, and I was like, she didn't need to do that. That was rude. She just killed the guy, and then it's like, yeah, he was testing my position, so I put him down. I'm like, well, she didn't have to do that. She could have trusted the guy. But I could see it might have been a bit too risky, but it was just like, that's effed up. Like, he took his mask, like, he seemed so sincere, and then she was just like, you out. So, sucks for that guy, but it is what it is. Right here, Dwight's kiss. He was able to somewhat move on. He had the opportunity, at least, to move on from Sherry. And then this was when he was deciding to actually leave the Saviors, and he was just like, I don't want to lead these people. Like, in the moment, it was like, yeah, we got to get rid of Negan. But now it's like, I don't want this. I don't want this. So he decides that he's going to leave, despite the fact that he actually has the opportunity to be with someone else. And I want to say her name is Laura, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of L's in here. I want to say her name is Laura. I know she shows up later, so I'll have a note for that later. But Dwight gets a kiss, but he's like, I gotta go. I still gotta go. Then we have on the leaders meet is what I put here, and this is where Negan kind of officially comes back into the fold, where Rick is like, all right, let me talk to you. Let's rap, as they used to say in like the early 90s. Moving on from that, we have Dwight officially leaving, and they have some stuff with Sherry. Sherry sure was something, huh? Get to her later. Okay, it was Laura. So Laura decides to tag along when Dwight leaves. She's like, fuck those people, I'm coming with you. So that was kind of cool. And he's like, okay, I kind of have somebody. And so then we have, I don't remember the dude's name, but once again, we'll just get, the whole family is trash anyway. One of these people was like, I forgot her name. Who was it? Maybe it was Tammy. I think Tammy was the mom. That whole family is garbage. But the dad, whatever his effing name was, he's like, okay, we're going to kill Rick Grimes. And so he convinces the other dude to be like, okay, let's kill Rick Grimes. And so at first the dude was like, yeah, we're going to beat up Rick Grimes. And then it's like, this is the only way. We got to kill him. And so I have neck bite 2. Referring back to the last time that Rick had to bite somebody in the neck and kill them. He had to defend himself because he's getting beat in the middle of the night. And so he bites this dude's neck. He rips it apart. He hits him. And then it's over. He kills that guy. And Rick basically passes out. So you got Rick just covered in blood. He's knocked out. And then this dude is dead because he ripped through his throat. And the other dude just took off. It was like, I thought he was dead and he left. But I'm just like, wow, neck bite number 2. Whole family, trash. I hate all of them, which is deserved. And then I put, she let them bang. Andrea saw Rick and Lydia having sex. Or Carl and Lydia, not Rick. Carl and Lydia having sex. And she's stunned. She walks away. Then she's about to walk back and touch the door. And then she walks away. And I was like, interesting choice. She's letting him just have, like, this moment. What the heck was this speech about? Oh, okay. Because I'm like, what is happening here? So I just put Rick Grimes because everybody's cheering Rick because this was him being like, this is what happens in our community. And I'm not going to kill people just because they beat me up. But this is what happened. Like, we need to bond together and be an actual unit because we already have people. We have the Whispers. Like, we literally are fighting with each other. This is, of course, after they already had the big brawl within the like their sort of town hall meeting, and people just started throwing fists at each other. So he's like, we can't be doing this. I got it. We already fought each other, and then I almost got killed because of the Whispers and people thinking that I'm not really taking the right actions. So he says like, this is what's happening and stuff, and everybody cheers. And then of course the next scene after that is Negan going like, attaboy. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then we have Gabriel fights. So he decides that he's going to join the battle. I thought that was interesting. I hadn't seen him in 100 million years. He only shows up when people die because, of course, he's a pastor. And so he was like, I'm going to officially join the fight. Probably shouldn't have, but hey, we'll get to that later. Then I have Michonne leads. I don't know why the F I put that. Oh, this was for the Hilltop. Or not the Hilltop, for the Kingdom. She was like, I thought about it and stuff like that. She doesn't actually end up leading. That's why I put Michonne leads. It's just to kind of fly through, but she doesn't actually end up leading, which I thought was interesting because it seemed to fit. Like, they have the different characters, obviously her being with Ezekiel, but as they kind of go through, enough time had passed and just the way things were, it was like, I don't need to mess up what they already have. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I thought for sure it made perfect sense that that's what would happen, is that she would eventually get her own community to lead, and she sort of does, by the time we hit the ending. But I thought that was interesting. It doesn't technically end up happening. But then we have a bigger world. The radio officially kicks in, and that's where we start to get the Commonwealth. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then I also have this. Here we go. Little douchebag. What's this kid's name? I have Bonk as the thing, because I always think that's really funny, because Rick just hit the kid in the head with the cane. Classic old man move. Just hit him in the head with the ball of the cane. Brandon's trash. His dad is trash. His sister, his daughter, his mom. Wow, they're all those wrong. His mother, Tammy, I believe, trash. Whole family, just fucking assholes. Just a shame. My very next note, hate Brandon. He was like, I don't like Rick. Why don't you kill him for me? Classic mistake. So of course he lets out Negan. Terrible idea. But then we have the propaganda for silencing the whispers. I thought that was interesting. Even when I first saw that, I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And it was interesting that ended up coming to fruition. And my very next note was actually fear. Because this was the scene where the guy was like, I've never seen this dude before. He's one of the Whispers. He just, he took his mask off or whatever. And I was like, yeah, it's that propaganda being like, Rick was like, I want them to understand, what's happening. And technically he was manipulating them so that their anger and all that stuff was kind of put off of him so that he had time to, officially plan. But I was like, even when I first saw it, I was like, I don't think that's going to work. And it's funny, they reference it later. As soon as Andrea sees it, she bursts into the room and is like, now we got propaganda. If you keep that up, somebody's going to get hurt. That was like the first thing she said. Like, it's going to make people paranoid, especially when it's specifically about people that are hiding in plain sight. That's like the worst thing you can do is be like, keep your eyes on them. But of course it was, he was kind of playing the field a little bit to kind of hold things off a tiny bit. Bit of a mistake though, but at least that was the only time. I thought for sure that might kind of escalate, but fortunately that was like the one incident, and then I guess technically things just continue to be bad, so they don't really have time for paranoia and propaganda to be their real issues. They end up having much more pressing matters. I have this note here, Kelly and Connie. I thought that might have led to something, because they were like, oh, what if we just leave? Like, these people aren't really our people, which I thought was interesting considering the amount of time that had passed by this point. And Magna and Yumiko kind of talked to them and it's like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, we're with them. Like, we literally kidnapped Andrea and she was cool. Like, these are our people now. Like, they could have effed us up during that moment and they didn't. These are our people. And so I put that note because I was like, whenever there's somebody who's kind of in doubt during like a wartime situation, that's just a bad thing, because it just made it seem like something serious is going to happen and they're going to be like, I don't need to stand with you though. And then I thought they might back out and get somebody killed, but that never actually ends up happening. Then we have Brandon here. I put dead Brandon. That whole family was dumb. Says it all. That was a perfect note. I also put Lori is hilarious. Next page was super funny because this is when I put Lori again. Man, I don't know why I was doing that. I put Lori all over the place. It was still for Maggie. I don't know why the F I've been writing Lori all the time for Maggie. That's super weird. But this is when Maggie and Andrea were catching up. And Andrea was like, still holding out hope for, Sophia and Carl to be together. And she's like, don't. Very interesting. Foreshadowing. And then Maggie was so funny to me. She was like, no, not that at all. Get the crazy girl pregnant, please. I don't need that drama. That genuinely made me laugh. And I think she had another moment later on. Or she was involved in the situation or something. But she was saying some stuff that's just so real and so hilarious. Stephanie officially gives her name to Eugene. So that was just worth noting there. And then I put Negan pulled a Rick. So Negan did something I was not expecting. He ends up getting out. He goes to the Saviors. And they have this whole montage where he spends days with them. He learns their rules. He learns about, like the whole rape stuff. He's like, oh, these are just words and stuff like that. And he sees how crazy they are. And so he's with them. And then he gets close, has the conversation. And the reason I put Negan pulled a Rick is because they had the conversations like, yeah, maybe I do belong here. But I don't want to be here. And he slits Alpha's throat. And then he cuts like her whole head off. He cuts her head off and everything. And I was like, that's not what I thought was going to happen. I'd seen a cover art like years ago when they were fighting against the Whisperers, and I could have sworn like they showed Negan and he was basically on the side of the good guys and he was fighting against the Whisperers. That was like the cover they used. So I thought that's actually what happened. I thought it was like a second all-out war, and then Negan would be the one technically leading the charge because Rick had all his injuries and everything. And so I thought Negan was going to be leading once again the physical fight. I didn't think it was going to be in this way where it was like, he kind of infiltrated. It was like, yeah, I do belong here. I am strong and all this other stuff. And he's, him and Beta just have like this instantaneous issues. No, I mean, everybody has issues with Negan because he's Negan and he's weird. But I didn't think he was going to just chop her head off. It was just like, wait until Rick gets a look at you. And I was like, that's an interesting way for that step to kind of take place. So then, of course, with her dying, Alpha dying, Beta's like, okay, we're killing everybody. Not only did they cross over our territory, which is what he technically used, but I would assume it's more for the fact that they killed Alpha. Even though it was technically Negan, but it was like, this is all them. Like, it was basically all these issues, it's them. Let's kill all of them. So he's like, hey, let's just kill everybody. Let's lead our horde out. And unfortunately, Gabriel had his moment where he was like, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna try to fight. He climbs the tower. And the first thing I thought was he started climbing down, and I was like, why didn't he just shoot? That was the first thing. Like, the whole thing was like, if I see a big thing, I think he even specifically says, like, I'll let off some warning shots or something like that. And the first thing he did was go back down the ladder. And, of course, he falls, catches his foot, and it snaps. And he's upside down, pretty much at the very bottom, too, and that's what really sucked. He was basically at the bottom of the ladder, snapped his leg, torn apart, he screams, Beta comes in, I will help you, and he just walks past and cuts him open. And I was like, man, that's such an effed up way to go. Like, this character has been here from the beginning, hated to do it at the start, and then he just vanished because, of course, like I said, he's just in the church, that's his role. Finally decides, I'm gonna fight. Very first actual moment, just dead. He fell off the ladder, got caught, snapped his leg, couldn't move, and then the dude just walks past him, and it's just cuts him open, and then the zombies just eat him as his guts spill out. And it was just super effed up. I was like, wow, that's how Gabriel goes out, and it was just crazy. And then we find out that the saviors are out for themselves. Trash people stay trash. I also put Cap ? I forgot what the F that was for. I don't remember what that was for. Somebody was lying about something. I think it was because Negan was trying to talk to what the F was happening? I don't remember what was happening. It was something where Negan's talking to Dwight, and he's talking about Sherry. And he said he saw her coming from a mile away. She was a ladder climber in the worst way. She had 1 foot outside your relationship long before I came along. I did you a fucking favor. I don't know why I put the question mark for Cap, but maybe it was because maybe he wasn't wrong. I think that's what it was. I was like, I'm not sure he was wrong about Sherry because she proves that she's not exactly the most trustworthy person. So I think that's why I put Cap. I'm not 100% sure. We have a Mario reference, which I loved. Negan references, he says, he, of course has Lucille back. And he says, this is my Excalibur, my flashing invincibility star. That was great. I knew he had all sorts of weird stuff to say, but he threw in a Mario reference, and any video game reference is always worth noting for me. Then we have the Hilltop Attack. That's when I discovered, they actually have weapons. The whole time I was like, they just walk around and they have knives. And then they're like, no, we have flaming bows and arrows too. Caught me off guard. The whole time I was just like, oh, yeah, I would have got a bunch of people killed because I would have been like, they don't have anything but knives. I was wrong. I didn't know. So the Hilltop gets attacked. It was real crazy. Hilltop ends up living. They actually win. It was actually a really cool shot with you have Herschel kind of at Maggie's legs, and she's like, yay. She's, super calm, like, yay, we won. Like, this was super crazy. Like, Carl almost died in a fire. Like, it was just wild for them, and they're able to kind of push back, and everything's good. So then we have Sherry wants everything. Really interesting. She's like, I believe in Rick Grimes. So I was like, okay, I'm not 100% sure where things are headed here. And then it's like, oh, Rick does what he does, and once, they kill off the Whisperers and they're weak, then we go in and we tank everything. I'm like, oh, I do hate Sherry. What a bitch. And then we have Alexandria being overrun. A lot of other stuff in between that, clearly. But Alexandria gets overrun, more chaos, it's just crazy. Then here we go, the Saviors rally. Like they're watching from the binoculars and stuff. It's like, oh, this is a heck of a show. And then their whole plan is like, we're gonna go in last minute just to take everybody out. And it's like, okay. So, we got Rick and Negan working together. Dwight's doing his thing. He's become a great leader as far as like the military element. I thought that was actually kind of cool. I wasn't expecting that to happen. And then, of course, we have the rest of the characters trying to do the best that they can to lead off this giant herd because they thought they beat the Saviors. It's like, yeah, we killed off like hundreds of them. It was like hundreds. No, there were thousands. We are screwed. And so, Rick's freaking out, but it's too late. Horde comes back in, so of course they have to lead them off. And I put the ocean dead because they just walk them off into the water. So that was actually pretty interesting. And then, of course, Andrea. So I figured Andrea was not going to make it. I was like, we have basically, if we're going like three pillars, you have Rick as the main character, you have Carl his son, and then him falling in love with Andrea, that kind of elevated her character. She was already important because she was one of the, actually, I think they were the only three, now that I think about it, from the very beginning, because I can't even remember where Sophia came from. I guess Sophia was with them. So Sophia was, like, they were like the four people that were technically there from the very beginning. And so I was like, all right. I was like, Sophia admittedly isn't in the story enough for them to even kill her off. That's kind of what was in my head. And I'm like, I think Andrea's going to go. Like, I just figured, I was like, it was unfortunate, but I was like, I think that she will. And I thought it was an interesting way to handle it. It wasn't super grandiose, the way that they did it. It was just, she went to help Eugene, she got scratched, and then it's like, we don't have time for this, like, we need to go. And I thought it was interesting, and I was just like, wow, it's a heck of a way to do it. And I have more of the notes as they get to like her actual kind of burial and all that stuff, but I thought it was a really interesting way that they kind of handled that. But my next note is, that's her fault. Sherry came at him with a knife because she's crazy, and he pushed her. I guess he pushed her with some sort of amazing strength, because you honestly can't break your neck that easily. But apparently he pushed her so hard, it was like a sonic boom, and she hit the chair and snapped her neck. It was like, Sherry, and I just put, that's her fault. Oh well, she gone. And then we have all the stuff with Andrea, and they did like a slow thing with her. Like, typically it's like this grandiose moment or just something where it's like, holy God, like even Morgan's death. Or not Morgan, but Gabriel's death. I guess both of their deaths, really. That's how most of the deaths are. It's just like this crazy moment is happening, and you're just like, I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe he fell off a ladder, his leg got snapped, and then here comes Beta, and he just slices his throat, or he slices his stomach open, and he just kills him. And it's like, it's quick, but it's still just like, it just hits you like instantly, and it's over, and it's gone. With Andrea, they let it play out, and she actually gets sick. It's the classic, like, she actually got scratched, which I think is the first time that happens in quite a while in the story. Between both 3 and 4 is the first time I feel that happens for quite a decent chunk of time, where it's like, oh, it's a scratch, and they can't, they don't just decapitate or amputate whatever part is bit or anything like that. It's like, she's bit, and we just have to wait for it to happen, or at the very least scratched. So they have it go through, and everyone comes in, and they meet her and everything, and everybody kind of says their piece. Eugene is very upset because he feels like it's his fault for trying to have that plan that doesn't work, which technically it worked, but her getting hit. And so they have like kind of just the gambit of all the characters kind of running through, and I thought that was really cool. It's like they have a full page where it's literally like 16 panels, and it's just different people coming through saying different things. Like, even Negan comes in, which Negan says his things like, they weren't gonna let me see you, and all he says was, you're a badass, you were hot as fuck, I'd have been honored for you to be the one to kill me. I guess, that's his way of being nice. But they have everybody come through, and I thought that was really good. And then, of course, we have Rick being the last person, and the pain that he's gone through, because it's like, he talks about how he's happier now than he's ever been. I think that was a part of the kind of breakthrough from Michonne. That was one of the extra things he mentioned. It was like, being allowed to be happy and all that stuff. And so they have that moment where they're having their conversation. Carl leaves the room, and Andrew's like, I'll see you in the morning, and he's like, okay, I love you. And so he goes through, and it's just so much pain, and he's talking about how he can't be strong anymore and stuff. And then she has like that one moment where she jumps, and it was like, you have to be. And it was really well done. I really enjoyed this scene. It was just tragic, like just going through. I was like, man, because of course it's being towards the end of the series, I was like, this was one of the super long ones that you kind of just had to wait for. It wasn't, even if Michonne had died, she wasn't literally within the first group. It's just like Glenn, when he got killed, it was like, holy crap, this was literally the first person you see is Glenn. That's why Glenn's death is still like one of the biggest deaths I would say in the whole series, because it's just like, he was the first person you ever see. Like, no matter who else dies after that, before or after, it's like, he's the first person. He's the first person we see, at least, in the apocalypse. Technically, the first person would be Shane, but that's pre-zombies. But post-zombie, Rick Grimes, Glenn, whatever his last name was. That's effed up, but I can't remember what Glenn's last name was. But there you go. So with Andrea, it was that distance, from beginning to end, like having her die. It was just like, this is nuts. It was just crazy the way that they did it. And then of course, Rick not being able to do it, I thought was interesting, and I was surprised. I didn't expect them to actually do it where she came back as a zombie. I thought he'd do it and then they wouldn't show it, which seems to be a trend that they have, because they do that, of course, later on, where I was like, man, you think that it would be one of those things where, especially for certain characters, it would kind of just be like, it's over. You don't have to see that side of, you don't have to see a zombified version of them. But they do that both times. I guess we're in full spoilers. I don't know why I'm pretending like, this person, with Rick, they do the same thing, where I didn't expect that to happen, where it was like, oh, like, he was shot in the heart and stuff, but I was just like, oh, zombie Rick was just not what I was anticipating. But same thing with Andrea. I didn't think that they'd actually show it where he wasn't able to do it until after she turned. So I was kind of surprised. So they have like the moment. They have two, which I thought was kind of cool. So my note was Andrea's gone. And so that's for this page where it's her in the bed. And so I was like, okay, I feel like they did it twice. So that was her, that was like their peaceful ending moment. And then, they go a few pages later after she changes, and then they do this full, 2-page spread. And I was like, that was a really interesting way to do that, where he had that peaceful ending, and then he has the dark ending, where it was like he couldn't do it before she turned, and then he had no choice, and her dead body's on the floor now. And I was like, that's an interesting way to kind of have that play out. And so then I put stronger, and so they they have the her final words kind of playing over as he goes outside. I'm not gonna lie, this was legit the part that made me cry. Like when they're all like their hands are on each other's shoulders, that was the part that made me cry. I didn't even with Rick stuff, nothing else made me cry the whole series, but Andrea dying, that was the one that got me. I was like, man, like her final words and everything, and how much it hit Rick, because it was him after being happier, and the same same thing with Carl. Like he called her mom and stuff, which they talk about. I think it's a few pages after this where they have a very specific moment, and I was like, man, that just makes it hit even harder, because that was a big thing in the story. But that was the part, like this specific page. I think this is when the tears were hitting, and I was like, man, that got me for real. Like no other death, even like I said, including Rick's, no other death got me. But Andrea's was the one where it was like just the emotions of it all, the words, everything came together. And that moment I was like, yeah, and that made me cry a little. So Andrea was the one that got me. And then of course my next note was we find out that Carl did actually tell Andrea about Ben, and that was a really great moment too. And he talks about how Rick was like, your parents will love you even if they don't like you, and all these other things, they'll still love you. And after that moment, that's when I started to call Andrea my mom. And I was like, that was cool to find out. I just thought that was really good. So that was definitely the really intense moment. But as we go through, we have the Commonwealth coming in. My next note is actually, it was Sadiq. He was the one in the streets that Rosita went to. That was an interesting reveal. And Eugene had a very interesting choice to make, where he was like, Sadiq thought that they were in love and it was going to be this whole thing. And Eugene remembers like her, pretty much, I think that was the last thing they actually said to each other, or some of the last stuff. It was like, I didn't love him, he didn't love me, it was just a big mistake. And he was going to say like, you're wrong, she didn't love you or anything. But he just stops and he's like, thank you for telling me. And it was like just a huge moment where it was just like, he could have said a bunch of things, like he could have said a million things. He never even knew who it was. And it was just an interesting moment where it was like, he made the choice to just be like, thank you. And he's able to just allow that to kind of move on. And I thought that was a huge moment for his character, just to even, for anyone to just be able to do that when they're just hit with that out of nowhere. Like, I noticed you've been acting weird. Like, yeah, I was the one that she cheated on you, was about to have a baby with. And it's like, oh, you're really close on the edge of this building, man. Because for a split second, I'm not going to lie, when he got angry and then they showed, like, actually, this spot right here, I was like, he's a little close on that edge, and I don't know if that's where he should be sitting right now with Eugene being that upset. But Eugene calmed down instantly, and everything was okay. And I was like, for a second there, I'm like, I think he might push the Deke just right off this building. He might be gone. But they kind of worked things out, and it was just an emotional moment for them both to share. And I was like, okay, that was interesting for sure. And then, of course, we have the introduction of Princess Juanita. Ooh, crazy character. I love her for sure. She's funny. So I just thought that's obviously worth noting. She's interesting, and she goes through, has an interesting moment talking about, like, all the racial stuff. And it's like, you only got 2 white people. And then Magna was like, I'm actually Greek. Like, what's the point? I thought that was interesting that they put that in there. It's like, I'm not white, I'm Greek. So I thought that was cool. Obviously, you can't tell anybody, like, unless someone's like dark skinned in this, you can't tell anybody. Everything's black and white. Honestly, when she first showed up, because I forgot that she's on the cover here, dark skin, I was like, oh, she's white. I just assumed she was, because she's just light skinned, which is super weird, because she's light-ish on the front here, but they don't put, like, any hint of color. Like, Michonne, they kind of show as, like, being light. It's basically black and white. It's like, if you're kind of light skinned, then you're just white in this drawing, which I find very funny. Because they kind of have Michonne where it's like, Michonne looks light skinned in this. Princess just looks white. And I'm just like, it's just funny that they have that. And it's like, but you see them in color, it's like, there's a huge difference. Like, and I just thought that was funny. It was like the thing that made me notice that. Because when she talks about it, I was just like, oh, she's not even that light. It was just weird. Like, they didn't put, like, any hint of, like, color in her character in the actual black and white drawings, which is really funny to me. So then we have the Sophia stuff. This was another moment where I was like, where's Sophia at? Where's she been at? So she shows up again. Her and Carl end up having some moments later on, but this actually is when Carl is talking with Lydia, and then they hug, and they show Sophia in the background with Herschel, and I was like, oh, there's Sophia in the background. It was just funny because I was just like, where the heck has she been? It's like, she disappears a lot, and I was just super curious. I was like, they're rebuilding, they went through battles and all this stuff. Where has Sophia been? And then the first time I see her, which I feel like is in forever, honestly, it's probably, I think it might be genuinely like the first time she actually shows up. Like, no joke, I honestly think that's probably the first time she shows up in Compendium 4. And it's like halfway through. More than halfway through. Like, that's how far through she shows up. So, that's where she was at. In the background. Beta gets killed. He just died. Like, they literally have a great reference later on where Jesus is like, yeah, that's the end of the Whisperers. They kind of went out with a whimper, I guess. That was interesting. Like, he came up at them in the middle of the night. I honestly thought they were going to kill Jesus. I figured Aaron would live, but I thought Jesus was going to get killed. But they have a little fight and stuff. And I remember when he first showed up, I was just like, crap. Because I thought they were going to end up just killing him off because I didn't think he would notice. And I was really worried. And then it was like they got him. Like, he gets shot. And then it's like, oh, this dude's actually like a basketball player. And he's about to say his name. And then he jumps up. No, I have no name. And then he collapses back down because he's actually dead. Weird. But hey, he's gone. And so are the Whispers. And that was it. They went out with the whimper, which I thought was really cool because they were already rolling into the Commonwealth stuff. And I was like, that's a really interesting way to kind of play around with that. So I enjoyed that. Maggie going after Negan and kind of wanting to know like what the deal is, like where he's staying and stuff like that, I thought was interesting. And her having to have this choice of like, do I officially get my revenge now that those issues are over? Once everything was done with the Whispers, Rick is like, I'm letting Negan go. Like, he can't stay here, of course, but we're letting him go free. So they had an interesting choice there, and I thought that was kind of cool. And so we get to see a little bit of what Negan is doing by himself. I thought it was super funny before this moment when that dude, his name's in here somewhere. I'm sure I'll get it eventually. But the guy that was banging Maggie, when he's following him and Negan was like talking to the zombies and he's like, man, I need to save this stuff for, when there are people around. I thought that was a really funny line where it's like, dang, that was a good one. Mama Negan's death kitchen of death. And then he's just like, I need to save this stuff for when there's people to see. I just thought that was really funny. So we have Lucille too. He even goes past the barbed wire and everything. And then as that kind of ends up happening, here comes Maggie. And they have the conversation and he hits her with the classic, I feel super horrible now. Please kill me so I don't have to deal with it. And she realizes, like, oh, he has to suffer now. And I thought that was great. It was like he officially, like, he really does understand that he's a shitty human being. And that's all there is to it. And he's like, please kill me. And she's like, nah, I'm gonna let you live with it. She even kills the zombies outside so that he has to live. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting way to kind of end out his character, where he's just alone. Nobody wants him. The saviors don't want to go back to him. They even reference that, where he's like, the way I did things was kind of crappy. Only one dude wanted to go back to that. And nobody respects that, respects that guy. But that was interesting. You know, like, that's just his ending. And then, you know, actually they weren't banging at the time, but Maggie officially kisses that dude. Really wish I could remember his name. Dante. That's his name. Which is a shame I'd even forget that because of Devil May Cry. I should have remembered that forever. But I didn't. So then we get Lance Hornsby, which I just instantly assumed he was a villain. I was like, Lance Hornsby? That's a villain's name. So they, of course, end up meeting the troops of the Commonwealth, which is pretty cool. They have their back and forth there. And then they go through and, you know, they do the classic, like, we need to know where you've come from, what's your name, things like that. They also make a reference to a guy that covered himself in guts, like, 24/7. And I was like, that's the second time that gets referenced. That doesn't go anywhere, but that's referenced, I want to say, in Compendium 3 somewhere. I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was just like a random thing that somebody said. I can't even remember who said it, but he said it here, and I was like, who is this dude that's covering himself in parts? Because it was like, it sounded like it was the exact same person, the way that they described it. It was like, yeah, and there was this dude, I think it was from Magna's group, possibly, where she mentioned when they were like in the facility or the area that they were in, there was also a guy there that was always covering himself up, or, you know, at least had stuff to cover himself with. And then I think someone explained it to her, or whoever was having that conversation, I think the person that they were talking to explained, like, yeah, I've done that in the past. It actually does help keep the zombies off of you. And then they referenced it again, and so I thought that was worth noting. It doesn't come back later, because I was like, is this going to actually be a character that I just forgot about or something weird? But it was just like, that's the second time that got referenced, and it seemed like the same person. So I thought that was worth noting. And I was just like, It ended up being nothing, but I thought it was worth noting. Then we have the Commonwealth. They actually show the city. Then we have the board, which was super wild, and we find out that one of Michonne's daughters is alive. I put daughters because we didn't know if they were both alive, but we do find out that it's just one of her daughters, whose name I wrote somewhere. It's also here, I believe. It is not. I want to say Elodie was her name, if I'm not mistaken. I put Hornsby as clearly the new villain because he's definitely a douchebag, but it turns out that was just kind of the hierarchy thing of, like, the people at the top were just twats. So that's just how it was. It seemed like, because he was the first person, I was like, okay, so he's clearly the new villain. He's definitely in line, though, so it's sort of counts. He was one of the new villains. But Pamela Milton, Commonwealth Governor. Governor Part 2. Governor. There we go. It's always bad. Elodie was the name of her daughter. They have a very touching reunion, and that was really cool. Just really, I never would have expected that from the series, and then, you know, they just show her name, you know, like she's on the picture board. I didn't see that one coming. I thought that was a really cool twist toward, you know, going into, like, the end of the series. I thought that was great. Maggie and Dante ended up getting busted, and I specifically put they couldn't bang in the house. Like, they decided to go in, like, the weapon shed, as if that wasn't the place that most people would probably have gone. So I thought that was funny, but I was just like, okay, it is what it is. Then we meet both. I put Mercer because I like him more, but we also meet the kid, the douchebag kid who I totally hate. Like, he's in the same line of hatred as Brandon, where I'm like, just no value as a human being. But the governor's son, who's just a little twat, hate that guy. But we meet him and we meet Mercer, who's super cool. He's like, I like the design. Like, he's the only person who doesn't really wear the helmet because obviously he's the main character, so you actually have to see his face. He's got the Mr. T thing going and all that good stuff. Wipes out a buttload of zombies, but the two got through, and he just deals with it because that's kind of the society of the Commonwealth. But it was really interesting. I also have Horror Blasted because Sophia had to find out from the rest of the townsfolk that her mom was actually with Dante, and I just thought that was super funny. And so I just put Horror Blasted because she was like, you know, I think, yeah, Sophia, that's completely unacceptable. As unacceptable as being a fucking whore. It was just funny. So I had to put Horror Blasted because I thought that was really funny. So then, of course, we have Princess fighting the guards. I thought that was cool because she was just like, oh, you gonna make me put my goggles on? Beat everybody up. We do find out later. They have a great line, too, where she's like, oh, they're like the trainees are the ones within the town. And she was like, okay, that kind of makes me feel a little bit better about them sucking. So I thought that was funny. But she can really fight. I thought that was cool. I feel like I wish we got to see her fight more. But she's so far into, like, the end of the series, she doesn't get to have, like, a bunch of fights, but she was cool. It was definitely interesting. Then we have, the douchebag again, where he was the one that started that whole mess and everything, and then he like backhands Michonne's daughter. She was about to chop him in half. She was like, "Oh, this is not how we do things." And she was reaching, and he was gone. He was about to be gone. Like, it was one thing when it was Princess, because she's like, "Yo, Princess, don't." And so she fought some guards and stuff. And then it was like, "Oh, you backhanded my daughter though. You're about to die." And so then I think actually on the very next page I put, "Here we go again." Because you got, like you get, like, the true glimpses. Because they did it with Hornsby, where I was like, that's a little odd. Why is he being like that? They talk about stations and stuff like that. And it's like, this is just our place in society. It's like, something's weird. So, here we go again. And then I put Sadiq understands because, when he caught them having that conversation earlier, Mercer's like, "I think you understand the blowing off steam conversation now." He's like, "Definitely." So I was like, he gets it now. Michonne leaves the sword behind. She officially gives it up to Eugene so that he can go back and say, like, this will tell Rick everything that he needs to know as far as my perspective on the Commonwealth. I also put, this bitch, she said something, I'm sure. Oh, because she called Alexandria a shithole. I just don't like her. She's not worth liking. Governor, question mark, because of course Rick was like, "Governor, huh?" And I just thought that was funny. Out with the whimper line, which is really good. I know I'm skipping through like a million things because we're just getting to the end anyway. I put Princess is Wild. They went through a fight and then she just turned around and just like kissed him. Was like, "I'm sorry, I thought we were sharing a moment." And I'm just like, she's funny, like, just interesting. I did it again, and I put Lori is the best. I don't know why I kept putting Lori. I don't know, but Maggie was the best. I don't know. I don't know why I keep doing that. So I think what it was is that she basically called out. I'm just gonna go with Milton, Governor Milton. She called her out like right off the top, talking about like someone can smile too much and stuff like that. I thought it was really funny, so I was just like, she's just the best. Like, it's just really funny, and she instantly didn't trust her, and it was just really good. So I like the way she did it, and she was talking about like, is this governor like are you talking trade routes, sharing knowledge, or your picture on the wall in every living room and every morning before school, we pledge allegiance to the uptight woman who smiles too much. That's just a great line, and it was really, really funny. So, I don't know how I kept getting Lori. That's really weird. I kept writing Lori down. That's crazy. The people's plight. Once again, there's just poor people. Like, they were just making society crappy, and it was like, the world should just be simple now. And it's like, this kid's, like, the family was too poor for this kid to eat. They're dealing with zombies. And it's like, they're still struggling just to feed one of their kids. And so it's like, here we go. And so, of course, when we have the people getting beat by cops, poignant. So, we got the defense attorney thing going. They shot through this, by the way. It was like, okay, this dude got hit. Michonne had to decide. I swear they had to have cut through, like, this had to be over the span of a full week. Like, she's going through, she stopped the people from beating this dude. Turns out he ends up dying. She's forced to defend the cops, basically, the guards. And so people are upset with her for that and stuff. And then they go through, and it's like 3 pages later, boom, riots in the street. Like, they're already rioting. Like, windows are being broken out. Michonne gets attacked. Like, everything was just absolute effing chaos. Wild. So the dude Jerome ends up dying in the middle of all that. And it was just crazy. It's just buck wild. Like, it was so fast. I was like, I can't believe this junk. It just happened so fast. I was shocked. I was like, I didn't see that one coming. Rick showed leadership because, of course, he was down there helping out. And naturally, the governor's like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm helping out. And I love the little box here with Mercer where he has like a little smirk like, yeah, now she got to get down here and actually do something and not just sit up top. I put sex because they talk about sex. It's Mercer and Princess, and they talk about great sex and all this other stuff, and casual relationship, not casual, and I just thought it was funny. So they end up getting together, and then we have the class. This was super funny to me. Carl getting caught by Sophia when he's walking down the hall, and she talks about like, I don't think I'll ever lose my virginity and all this stuff, and so she goes like, there's nobody here for me to have sex with, and then Carl goes, well, this is my room. And I just put whelp because that is the classic get me out of this situation term. Nobody ever says whelp unless they're like, well, this is me. I gotta do this thing. That's the only time whelp is ever used. So I thought that was super funny because I'm like, that's probably why they put that specifically, because that's the only time people say whelp. My next note was go ahead Eugene. He got a black girl. That was it. I just thought that was funny. Dwight, I put a question mark, and I didn't know what it was leading to when I put this question mark, but I was like, he's on edge, and he wants to help the Commonwealth, but he literally says like it was a test and the people passed, and it was just like, I don't know what's gonna happen with him, and unfortunately we found out fairly soon. Because after he has that conversation, Mercer's like, you're the leader. You know, he talks to Rick and is like, you're the leader that the Commonwealth needs. And I put, here we go. And I wrote 3 lines under, like, happening soon. I also love this scene where Sophia gets joined by, like, the new kid that was saved from the Whispers. And she looks back at Carl and he's like, yeah. And she's just like, I don't want to bang this dude. So I thought that was funny. Stephanie talks to Eugene about repainting her wig. I thought that was just funny that they put that in there. And then, boom, Dwight is killed. That was an interesting moment, and I didn't see it coming, but it was just like, wow, the arc that they took his character on, I never would have expected it to end this way, and I was like, it really sucked. I was like, wow, I was enjoying his character, I liked him, but he was definitely going down a really dark path, and the way that they ended, I was just like, man, it sucked that it had to end, but I understood why Rick did it. And it was just like, man, he had so much potential to just live a good life. Especially, like, you know, he left the Saviors and he was working with the military. He was mad at Rick already because of the stuff with Sherry. But he was like, how can I officially trust your word? And he'd already wanted to take him out before that. So they had already had, like, so many back and forth things. It was just like, it sucked to see it end that way. But I was like, I did understand it. And I was just like, man, it sucks. Like, it felt like he had this amazing chance at true redemption, and then he was just breaking down again because of what he went through with the Saviors and all that stuff. And he was kind of a man on his own. Like, he had someone that did love him, but he was really a man on his own. Like, he was breaking too much, and it was just like, it just didn't work, and that sucked. I was like, man, I wish it didn't have to happen, but I understood why it did. It just still sucked. Next note I have here is between Carl and Lydia when he said, like, we're both monsters, and she got upset. It's like, well, don't call your girlfriend a monster. Simple note, but hey, he didn't mean it that way. He fixed it up as well. Amazing recovery on that, by the way, before he left town. And then I put, shit is about to happen. They blew open the prison, and I was like, here we go. Here we go. Once again, it's all about to be bad. Magna helps lead. So that was the thing with Magna's character. She'd been leading already up to this point. I just put this here because it was like that final moment where she blows the horn and stuff. She had a very interesting role in the series where, like, her characters come in and she definitely has a couple moments, but I feel like with the amount of time her character is technically within the story, I felt like they didn't do much with her, where it was like she would always have these very small pockets of being, like, super important. Like, when they even first go to the Commonwealth, she's one of the people to go, like her and Yumiko, and that's actually where we officially find out that they're together. But she would have, like, these really small pockets of being, like, super important or just having something to do. And I was like, it's so interesting how big of a role she has. But I feel like, especially because of how fast I read it, I felt like she barely did anything in the series because I was just, like, flying through. And I'm like, she'd have these moments, but it never felt like she was doing anything that crazy. It was like, you know, she had a moment with Andrea where they were kind of getting along. And, you know, Rick does leave her in control, which I thought was interesting. But it was one of those things where I'm just like, you know, that showed, like, they do reference it throughout where it's like, yeah, she seems like a good person. Even when she was still new, when they have the scene where Rick actually talks to Michonne when they're at Oceanside, he does reference some stuff about her just being, like, a good person and seeming really capable and things like that. And, of course, she was the leader of that new group coming in. But she gets, like, such an important role within the series, but it was so weird kind of shooting through the story. I was like, I know she's done important things, but it seems so small compared to, you know, some of the stuff we see throughout the series. It was like, it just seemed weird that she had already hit the point of being a leader over, you know, some of the other people that we'd seen in the series. Like, he, like, vanishes in, you know, in this series for sure. Once his leg is blown off, he does a couple things, and he's mostly, you know, like, his exact position is mostly dealing with the hurt anyway. So it's just one of those things where you barely see people. But it was just kind of funny, like, she ends up taking over, and Jesus was always the dude who was just like, he was the nomad character, so I didn't expect that from him anyway. But it was just interesting that she definitely is an important character, but flying through this series, I was just like, man, she definitely has moments, but they always seem so small that it was just like, I was kind of missing how important she really was within the series. I was just like, she never stood out that much to me personally, but I'm sure other people, like I think I said in my last review, like for the Magna fans out there, I get it. For me personally though, I was just gonna flying through and was just like, I feel like she doesn't do much. That was just how it was. That was just me personally. So don't hate on me. That's just how I saw it. But she does good. She does good. And then I have one last war because of course the governor assumed, she was like, oh, you brought your armies here, like you sent me out so that you could bring your armies in and kind of rally your troops and all that. And it's like, that's not what's happening. Please don't. And then they were gonna fight. But fortunately, that doesn't actually happen. He hits him with one final epic speech. We are not the Walking Dead. So that's book 2. So of course it's a complete 180. Wish I had this actually noted down, but it's somewhere in here. Where is it, book 2? Yeah, it's book 2. This is one of these books. Hold up. It's book 1? Dang, they were in the prison for a long ass time. Book 1. We Are the Walking Dead is in here somewhere. And it was a good moment. You know, it was early on. I mean, heck, we're going back to Compendium, the prison, so long ago. I doubt I'll be able to find it just kind of strolling through here. But it was his first, like, crazy epic speech of, like, you know, we are the Walking Dead, and, you know, we're the ones going out, like, we're living on borrowed time. Like, it was a very different human being. Also looked incredibly different. I mean, Rick just doesn't look the same going from the beginning of the series to the end of the series. I will never be able to find this thing, but it's in here somewhere, I'm sure. It'd be great if I could, just to have the comparison. But it's the same thing. I think it's actually like the exact same sort of paneling and everything. But it's really cool. I'm just making like one final attempt to just stroll through all this. And they're not in the prison, so I can't find it. Oh well, I tried. We are not the Walking Dead. A great 180 for his character. Like, we're no longer living on borrowed time. We are living in the elements that will create a great future. And I thought that was really cool. It was a great way to do it. And it was that final epic speech, unfortunately. It was his final epic speech. And so, you know, it's like, do you people deserve, you know, these horrible things, like a government that does this and does that? And it's like, no, of course not. And so she gets arrested. Everything seems like it's kind of winding down. Sebastian was the kid's name. A little asshole. He does what he does, I guess. Everything seems like it's calming down. They clean up. They even reference it. What an asshole. There you go. So they go through, they have their conversations and everything. Things seem to be winding down. It's like, okay, we're going to figure out, you know, what comes next. Carl and Rick have their moment. It's like, all right, I'll see you tonight. Or I'll see you, you know, tomorrow. Everything's good. He's in his bed. Here comes Sebastian. And honestly, when he first showed up, I assumed this is where Rick died. And it was because it was simple. Everything that had happened, this whole book, from beginning to end, there's not much that's happening. You have a couple of people die the whole way through. You have Gabriel. I don't even... Brandon. Gabriel dies. And then Andrea dies. And so Andrea dies from the last conflict. That was the Whisperers. No one dies during the Commonwealth. Like, everything was like, there was tension and there were fights. No one actually dies. So it went through that whole final arc. I knew it was the... I mean, obviously I know what I'm reading the end of the series. So it was the final arc. And I'm like, not a single person actually dies. There was no actual war. They don't go through a final grandiose battle. They actually stop. They talk. Rick has, you know, his epic moment. He takes the prosthetic arm off and all that. We are not the Walking Dead. So all that went through, and everything was good. As soon as that door opened and it was him holding the gun, I was like, I think this is it, because no one's died. Rick has to die because everything has worked. Everything worked perfectly, which means he has to die. And so of course they go through, and Sebastian's having this conversation with them, and you know, Rick just says don't. And it was automatic. It was just the full page, just boom, he just shot through, and that was it. And I was just like, dang, Rick Grimes. And that's what my note is. It's just Rick Grimes. And so he shot, and then he's caught, and you know, he's stuttering, like I. And he's stuttering, and then it's like, what did you do? And he's reaching for him, and then he shoots him a couple of times. So there was no way out of this. Like, he shoots him multiple times, and he kills him, and he leaves him in the bed. And it was just interesting. It was just a back and forth, and it's just Rick Grimes is just dead with his eyes open on the bed, and they go, from night to morning. And just the way it looked, it was just like, man, all this stuff that they've gone through, stuff with Andrea, him losing 2 wives, losing a child, losing his daughter, losing all of his friends, all the people that he's lost, all the things that they fought through, and all these things. And, it always comes down to, like, just that random thing. Like, that's how things work. It's just that random person. And he shoots him a bunch of times, and he leaves him to die. And he's gone. And so, of course, Carl wakes up. And this was, what I mentioned before with Andrea, where it was like, you see someone that's dead, and you don't expect them, especially because it's these characters, you don't expect to see both halves of that, where it's like the sad moment and then also the zombie moment that's also sad. And Rick didn't even get to have, like Andrea was the one that had, a lot of people probably want Rick to have what Andrea did. And personally, I'm okay with the way they did it, because it was that, I think oddly enough, the best way I could really compare it, unless you were doing it like in a group specifically, I just realized this is almost an hour long. That's ridiculous. Excuse me. But unless you're actually reading with someone next to you, I feel like watching Rick be shot is like actually reading it by yourself. It's just a moment that you just have to deal with on your own. Like, it's just you. It's just you, just like Rick was by himself. There's nothing there. There is no grandiose moment. It's just like, it's something that's happening that sucks, and you're just there alone to experience it, just like Rick was. Like, he experienced dying by himself. There was no grandiose fight. There was nothing. It was just this douchebag of a kid who always had everything he wanted, and then he became a murderer. And just in a moment, Rick Grimes is dead, and he's just gone. And I think that's it kind of works, oddly enough. With Andrea's death, the story had to go on. Rick is the story. So with his death being kind of just secluded like that, and Carl comes in and he kills him, and then they have the amazing moment of just like the time that passes where like the people are just coming in and everything, and it's just Carl on the ground just crying, looking at his body. Incredibly well done. I really enjoyed that. So of course, they go through all the emotions of everything, and just the madness of him dying, and Carl really taking up the mantle of his father, where it was like he was super. Obviously, he wanted, he would love to have killed the governor's son, Sebastian. It's I keep forgetting his name, but the way they did it, I thought was really well done. And she's just like, he's my son, but he will spend the rest of his life in prison. And he's just like, okay then. Like, that's literally what he says. Okay then, and then it's just, and he even says, I'm sorry for what you're going through. Like, that is a character that grew from the kid that was always like, they're dead, move along. That kid has changed. And so that was a really good moment. And even she's stunned by that. It's like, I'm sorry for what you're going through. And she is like stunned. Like, he just said that to me. Like, my son just killed his father, and he's saying he's sorry for what I'm going through. That's development of a character. It was really well done. So I thought that was good. And then of course, he has a conversation with them and stuff. But we have like the people in mourning. I thought that was really well done. So I like this, kind of like Andrea's panel. This is the people not really being able to say anything to him, but it's the people that left. Everyone traveled home for the hero, Rick Grimes. And I thought that was really well done. And so I like the way it was handled. He cries and he says, I don't think I can move on from this. Yeah, I can't do this not anymore. And then, of course, that leads into the final chunk of the series. We have the lone zombie just walking through the field. And we have an adult, Rick Grimes. Carl Grimes. I don't know. I'll keep mixing the names up. But I like the way it was handled. Of course, my first note after the time skip, I didn't put this on here, but anime time skips, always great. But my note is Sophia and Carl after all, with a daughter named Andrea. I thought that was really cool. So going through this, everything is mostly good. Turns out Herschel sucks. Herschel is not the best. It was upsetting because they do the time skip. You want everything to be good, and it turns out Herschel just ended up being like a shitty bratty kid, which they even reference that he'd be a lot like Sebastian because Maggie would always give him everything he wanted. Turns out he's doing it. It's very classic. It's super funny how when society reboots, we just go Wild West again because he literally has a traveling zombie show. And I just thought that was the funniest thing. He has the jacket and the spats and everything. I was like, he doesn't have to dress exactly like they did in the Wild West, but he does. And it was just super funny. I'm like, I know he's doing a traveling show like it's the Wild West, but he doesn't actually have to dress exactly like that. He could wear something normal. but I just thought it made it funnier. But one of his zombies got loose. Carl killed it. Turns out that's private property because they're an anomaly now. It's been nearly 10 years, they reference, that a zombie has even been within their kind of quarantine zone. And I was like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. They've obviously lived so long with peace that zombies are a novelty now, but they're a super dangerous novelty. And they do, he makes money off of that. Herschel does what I think humans would do. Someone would find a way to make money off of that, because anyone will find a way to make money off of anything. And I thought it was realistic. And we find out Maggie was too busy. As she ended up taking over the Commonwealth, things just got too busy. So Herschel just kind of got whatever he wanted, and that's how he became a shitty person. He just got whatever he wanted. And that was interesting. That was very interesting. And we find out as we go through the trial and stuff, the reason Maggie was a little busy, it wasn't just, the Commonwealth. Maggie became the effing president. That was crazy. I did not see it. I love this too. Like, when she comes in, Herschel's like, Mom, and she looks at him, and she just has like this look of disgust, like, I failed, and he is the worst. And that sucks, but it is what it is. They have colonies now. They have the trains. They actually ended up doing that. Eugene with his train idea that actually ended up happening. Turns out Lydia is still around. Excuse me. I mentioned last time when she was first announced in my last review, when they first show her, and it's like, oh, look at the pretty young girl and who's totally innocent. She kind of looked like Andrea to me. And when she first showed up in this, she looked like Andrea again. And like, not 100%, but at first glance, I'm like, oh, she made me think of Andrea for a split second. It was interesting. So Lydia's still around. Everything's cool. They show Negan, which they referenced, like, right before that note, they referenced, like, oh, he's never actually there. I was like, they have to be talking about Negan. And I thought that was interesting. Like, he tries to... They've moved on at this point. It's been decades, and they just kind of move on. He knocks. Carl tries to... He says hello, is anybody there? And then he just leaves. Like, he doesn't talk to them. Like, Negan doesn't actually talk to anyone. He just stays alone. And I thought that was interesting. So, they reference Negan, and he's still kind of just living out there doing his thing. Lydia has a Connor. That was just something worth noting. Where she's totally trying to still bang Carl, and he's just like, nah, I'm faithful. I'm not for the streets. I am a man. A humble, faithful man, I guess. She's talking about licking holes again. She nasty. But he's like, no, leave me alone. I'm going to sleep now, and everything's cool. So they get to the Western frontier. We get to see, or the Western Front, same thing, really. But, excuse me. We get to see Eugene. Unfortunately, we find out that Stephanie has passed away. But he's building the train tracks, and they're just kind of flying out west. Laura still hates Rick for killing Dwight, which I thought was very interesting. And Carl, he was going to get on the horse, and then he's like, nah, you know what? My dad did a buttload of stuff. And F that. Like, my dad did good. Like, it's not just... Sure, a lot of people talk about it because she says, like, she went out there to kind of avoid all the Rick Grimes, Carl Grimes, fervor, if you will. And so he's like, look, my dad is the reason that we are where we are. Plain and simple. Like, I know that you're upset that he killed Dwight, but plain and simple, we are where we are because of Rick effing Grimes. And I thought that was cool. Like, he just defended it. It was, like, the only person where he actually showed that moment of actual anger. And it was like, show a little respect. So, I thought it was cool. It was like, he's like, I know everyone says, like, my dad is, like, an idol or godly, they talk about, like, an icon. It's like, he did do that stuff. I know people were there, but he did that. So show some respect. So I thought that was cool. Of course, he kills all the other zombies, too. So he's in trouble. He gets back home. Then we go to Judge Michonne, which I thought was cool. Judge Hawthorne, she takes Judge Hawthorne as her name. Michonne was a different person and stuff. So I thought that was super cool. Because I'm like, I don't think they ever did mention what her last name was. So I just thought it was someone else. And it's like, oh, that was meant to be like that bit of a twist. So I like the way it was handled. He talks about everything that's happened. Like his daughter, she'd never actually even seen a zombie and stuff like that. He's trying to keep things that way. And I love the way it was all handled. They talk about the trials, which was the rest, all of The Walking Dead. And I like the way that she goes through and she's like, okay, it's clear that things have changed and they've gotten so much better that people kind of take for granted what we have. They didn't live through the trials, young generations and all that stuff. So I'm making a law to outlaw being able to utilize zombies as entertainment. And I thought that was cool. And she's like, you're free to go. And I love the conversation they have where she's like, come on, you thought I was going to let you go? Like, come on, you crazy. So I thought that was really funny. And he just smiles and it was like I'm not going to sit. Like, I had to, like, get you in here. I'm, highest of the favorite line. high court, boom. It's like, that's it. It's my rule. I'm not letting you go to prison. I say what happens. Plain and simple. So, of course, she totally saved him because he would have been in so much trouble. But really funny, and I like that. I put kids are assholes. They really are. They come out of the courthouse, and these are the kids who don't know anything about the world. And it's like, oh, nice iPad. You leave the parent at home? And I'm like, these kids don't understand. And then, of course, someone says, like, don't you know who that is? It's like, my dad told me all about him and all this other stuff. So I thought that was funny. And Sophie even says it'll probably be another generation before people start really taking this all for granted. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was interesting. They have the big statue of his dad. And Sophia mentions leaving so he doesn't have to look. And he makes, like, one final look back at the statue. I thought that was cool. Where it's like he's kind of at peace at this point. And I thought it was cool. And, they talk about the true legacy of everything that's happened thanks to, the hero Rick Grimes and everything. And then Carl gets to have this one final moment where he reads through basically the story of The Walking Dead, and we get to see everybody. We get to see Herschel. It's just interesting to be like, dang, that sucks that he grew up to be an asshole. But, so Back to the Future stuff, to become assholes or something? So, we see Herschel, we see Maggie, we actually get to see Jesus and Aaron, so that was actually kind of cool, because they referenced them, but they didn't show them, so I was happy that they did actually show them at some point. We get to see Negan, who seems to still have jet black hair and still be wearing a leather jacket. So I was like, good for him, I guess. We get to see Mercer. We get to see Princess, who in this specific drawing looks like a monster because, like, they don't do, like, the full detail. So it's just, like, the lines and stuff. But the way they drew it, she just does not look good. I was like, it just makes her look weird. So I thought that was funny. But we see Lydia and her Connor, I guess. We get to see Magna and Yumiko. We get to see Eugene. We get to see Laura kind of shaking hands with somebody, or someone that she's with. Like, she had, like, both hands around their hands. So I was like, it seems like she's been able to move on to kind of love someone else. We see Michonne with the grandchild. We see Governor Milton with his son Sebastian, and then it ends on Rick Grimes and Andrea Grimes. And I thought that was really well done. And then, of course, he tells his daughter that, this story is about your grandfather. Like, you really would have liked him. And she's like, I know, Dad, you tell me that every time. And he makes this face that I thought was super funny, where, like, he closes his eyes and then he, like, squints. Like, it's like he was just super pissed, like, don't fucking get it. And then she was like, read it again. And then it's like just a big shot of him smiling with his daughter. And then a beautiful little ending. Like, it's literally like a kid's storybook ending where it's just like the one small image, even though everything's super blown out. There we go. That one small image of some characters sitting and just the white background, and then the end. Whew. I didn't expect this to be an hour long. I thought it was going to be like 30 minutes like the other ones. My bad. You probably aren't even here. But hey, that is the end of The Walking Dead. And I really enjoyed it. I absolutely loved this finale to the series. It sucked to see Rick go. It sucked to see Andrea go. But I enjoyed every part of it. I really liked it. I liked the series as a whole from beginning to end. I really enjoyed being able to go through, especially kind of reliving the journey of the first 3 compendiums and then having like this new experience to kind of cap it off and officially end the entire series. It was really fun. I really enjoyed going through the whole series and remembering a lot of stuff and being like, I had more of an attachment to Olivia when she died because I actually remembered everything that she did because I read everything so close together. And, having more of an attachment, even though I kept freaking writing notes and putting Maggie's name as Lori, I don't understand why I was doing that. I do remember actually reading stuff with Lori and being like, that's what they went through, the stuff with her and Shane, and how, that stuff would get referenced later on and things like that. I loved when they would do that, where it would be, especially if you were reading it at the time, it would probably be years later where they reference this stuff and they'd be like, yeah, we had this one, like when they reference Tyrese when they get to Alexandria, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, for me, it was much shorter because it was all like kind of like in one book or 2 books. But you're actually reading that. That's probably like a year apart, and then they reference Tyrese. Like, wow, it's like a year later for people actually reading it. But it's still cool. Like, they go through these things, and that time has passed a lot for these characters, and like Carl mentioning that he told Andrea what happened with Ben, and it was like I wasn't sure if that would ever happen. So it was cool. I really enjoyed it. Whole series is great. Favorite part, if I had to choose, as far as like one set storyline, it might be the stuff with Negan. But at the same time, I think I would pick... It's hard to say, but I might actually pick the Whispers / the beginning of the Commonwealth. just because of the emotional stuff, like, Andrea's death and like how that war really took them into like the finale of the series. I do really enjoy how that happened. Like the Negan stuff was just wild, and it was like, what the F is gonna happen here? And it's definitely exciting because that's where a lot of chaos was happening and stuff. But I really did enjoy the Whisper stuff. Like story wise, I do think I would probably choose like the Whisper as like my favorite part, because we did still lose people, but also we had a lot of like the Negans. You'd have to obviously read through the All Out War to get to like what the F are they doing with Negan being like this weird middle ground where he's like, I'm not actually a bad guy anymore, and he understands what he did. It was like, that's really interesting. So I think I would choose, all in all, overall, I'd say the Whispers content is my favorite part. That that whole story arc, which I guess encompasses like the second half of book 3 and then the first decent chunk of this book as well. So that might actually be my favorite part of the series as a whole, because you do still lose people, you do still have that drama. Not that we, the Commonwealth was that thing where I was like the rising tension, but everything just kept working, and I was like, I knew it would end kind of the way it did. With the Whispers, it was kind of this weird back and forth, like, I don't really know. Especially because the Whispers technically ends as the Commonwealth is already being introduced, and that's another thing where it's like, oh, they went. It's not an all-out war. Like the war was really with the zombies, and then they took them out. Beta tried to come back, and he got whooped, and it was like, they're dead. Commonwealth, and it was like, huh? Is it as a whimper, if you will, as it ended? I still would think that was like probably my favorite arc for sure. But all in all, I love this series as a whole. At some point, I'll get to catching back up with the series. I think I'm technically at the Whisper stuff, which is why I wanted to finish this, and then not the newest, but the last season of the series is finally on Netflix, thanks to Ye Old Virus. They took them forever to finish it, so I'm gonna actually watch that and see how they handle the Whispers in the show. I actually wanted to read it first and then check it out, because I just wanted to do that. I didn't want to get any clues or anything like that, even though things are super different. Even in the show, they killed someone that doesn't even die in the series, which they do a bunch of times. Or at least in very different locations. But they did something, and it had me kind of reading the comics. I was like, ooh, this might be the spot. But it never happens, So I enjoyed that. I won't spoil who it is in case you guys want to watch the show, but it specifically involved the Whispers, and that person died, and I was like, oh, this is how the Whispers kind of show up. So great way to introduce them, by the way, in the show, and I think they did a great job in the comic too. But there's a very specific death where I was just like, I didn't think that was going to happen, and the way they handled it was really out of nowhere. Like, oh, that was a good way to do it. So it was just a really good job in the show, what they specifically did to kill a certain character, kind of introducing the threat of the Whispers. I was like, I didn't know that's how that scene was about to end, and it was like, ooh, I like that guy. But thanks for checking this out. If you did, I know, once again, over an hour long, no point for anyone to actually watch this, but if you did, I really appreciate that. We'd love to know your thoughts on The Walking Dead as a whole, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.